Today's lesson is Facts About Kombucha. Hi everyone, I'm Mike.
And I'm Candice.
And are you a fan of kombucha?
Well, depends on the flavor. They do come in quite a lot of flavors.
Really?
And
Okay.
I have tried them. Sometimes they're sold at these holistic markets.
Like a health food kind of place?
That's right. So you can buy all sorts of healthy things. And that is kind of a fad. It's kind of a craze. Lots of people are interested because of its novelty value.
Right. I hadn't heard of it 10 years ago, for example, but now it's very popular, yeah.
Some people drink it, and it's said to have quite a lot of health benefits.
Okay. So in the same way that people might talk about superfoods, blueberries or kiwis or very, popular food fads that might come along every once in a while, kombucha seems to be a pretty popular one recently, but in fact, it has a very long history that I had no idea about. If you'd asked me, I would have said it was invented in California in the 2010s or something like that. It goes back a long way. And now you can actually find it on the menu in many restaurants, can't you?
Yeah, some restaurants, especially, as I mentioned, the health food stores or restaurants that have more of a health focus.
Right. All right. So let's check out our article and find out some interesting facts about kombucha.
Facts about kombucha. You may have come across kombucha on restaurant menus and wondered what it was. If you had tried it, you would have noticed it tastes like fizzy vinegar. Recently, it has exploded in popularity. But what's so special about this drink?
So now we can talk about that first part of the article, the first paragraph that we read. It says, you may have come across kombucha on restaurant menus and wondered what it was. Yeah, I mean, if you shop in health food stores, as Candice mentioned, you probably know about it. But if you're like me and you don't necessarily shop in those types of stores very often, a restaurant, maybe your friend brings you to the hot new vegetarian place in town, or even more traditional restaurants are adding it to their menu. I think people are looking for things that aren't full of sugar like soft drinks, that have no alcohol like beer or wine, but they want to have something special with their meal instead of water, something healthy possibly. So kombucha might be there. You might come across it. When you come across something, you sort of witness it, you experience it, it's there. It wasn't planned, it was just part of your day, and you go there and go, hey, there's something new. I didn't expect to see it, but here it is.
Right, and if you haven't had kombucha before, if you were trying to describe kombucha, you could probably describe it as fizzy vinegar. So the next sentence goes on to say, if you had tried it, you would have noticed it tastes like fizzy vinegar. So anything with a lot of bubbles is usually described as fizzy. So earlier on you mentioned soft drink.
Right.
So soft drinks like sodas and Coca-Cola, they usually are fizzy drinks. But when we drink kombucha, of course, that has a lot less sugar in it. And that's probably another reason why it's become more popular than sodas in some of these health food places.
And then the article says, recently it has exploded in popularity. When something explodes in popularity, we might describe it as a craze or a fad or something really hot that's going on right now. It became very popular, and something's level of how popular it is, we would say it's popularity. If it has a lot of popularity, it's popular. A lot of people like it. It exploded in popularity. As I said, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't even know what the word kombucha means. So it's kind of come along and become really widely accepted and talked about and enjoyed in society, but kind of very quickly. So here's our question. But what's so special about this drink? This is a really good question. So let's get some of those facts about it in the second part of our article.
Kombucha begins its life as a mixture of tea and sugar. The secret ingredient that turns this sweetened tea into kombucha is a pancake-shaped blob called a SCOBY, which is short for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. The SCOBY ferments the tea by gradually converting the sugar into acids. The drink likely originated over 2,000 years ago in China, where people drank it for its health-promoting benefits. As the story goes, A Korean doctor by the name of Kombu brought the tea from China to Japan to cure an ailing emperor. From there, kombucha eventually made its way to Europe.
大家好，第二部分我们看到名词 ingredient 指原料、食材或是成分，像是 We have to buy the ingredients first if we want to bake a cake. 如果我们想烤蛋糕，我们首先必须购买原料。或是 All of the ingredients for this dish are grown locally. 这道菜的所有食材都是当地种植的。接下来我们看到单字 ferment， 这个字是动词，表示使发酵的意思。举例来说 The apples were fermented and turned into alcohol. 苹果被发酵而做成酒。也可以说You need to ferment kimchi for at least 1 to 5 days before it's ready for refrigeration. 你需要让泡菜发酵至少1至5天才能准备冷藏。接着我们看到动词 convert， 表示使转换、改变或是改造、改建房屋。例如 The program can convert video into different formats. 这个程式能将影片转换成不同格式。或是Julia converted the home's old garage into a guest room. Julia 把家里的旧车库改造成客房。再来我们看到片语 as the story goes， 指传闻或是据说点点点。像是 As the story goes, the man disappeared while on a fishing trip. 传闻那名男子在钓鱼行程中失踪了。或是 As the story goes,He came across a dusty old book in the library one day. 据说有一天他在图书馆恰巧看到一本尘封的古书。
Okay, we are back. The topic is kombucha. Let's find out a little bit about it and a little bit of its history, too.
All right, so kombucha begins its life as a mixture of tea and sugar. The secret ingredient that turns the sweetened tea into kombucha is a pancake-shaped blob called a SCOBY, which is short for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So that's already quite a mouthful.
Wow,
I think SCOBY's much quicker.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the secret ingredient, apparently, the SCOBY thing. We're going to find out more about SCOBY in a second. But an ingredient is one thing that goes into a food. This food will be made up of many different things, and you mix them together in the right amounts and prepare them, cook them, heat them, cool them, and then eventually you create another type of food. So if you're making a recipe, the first thing you'll do is have a list of things that you need to get. Get your flour, your sugar, your salt, your milk, your chocolate, and get all of those things. Those things are the ingredients, and once you mix them correctly, you will eventually have a chocolate cake or something like that. So it's something that goes into the food, and if it's a secret ingredient, it's not actually a secret. It's just kind of the key ingredient. Without this, you won't be able to make that food. It's the key or the secret ingredient. So what does it do? Well, it turns this sweetened tea into kombucha. Something sweetened has had sugar added to it. We wouldn't say something is sweetened if it's naturally sweet, like oranges or something like that. But if something is added to it, something sugar-like is added to it, then it is sweetened. So a lot of the teas you might drink, you might buy in the convenience store might be sweetened. They've added sugar to it in the factory to make it taste better.
Right, and the secret ingredient is called a SCOBY. And if you were to describe the appearance of a SCOBY, you'd say it was a pancake-shaped blob. Now, a blob is just, usually a substance between liquid and solid. It doesn't really have a very defined shape. So you can have a blob of clay. You could have a blob of jello. It doesn't really have a defined shape. If I were to describe a SCOBY, I'd say it kind of looks a little bit like a mushroom, maybe one of those wood ear mushrooms. But actually, SCOBY is the short form of a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So symbiotic means they work together. So if there is a symbiotic relationship, it means they work together for the benefit of both or to create some kind of benefit. We have different relationships in nature and the world, but if we have a symbiotic relationship, usually that's quite a positive relationship. So this culture of bacteria and yeast will create a combination of flavors and benefits and health benefits. So yeast, what is yeast?
Yeast is something that occurs naturally in the environment. It's actually a form of fungi. It's a form of mushroom, but of course it doesn't look like a mushroom. It's much smaller. There's yeast naturally in the air. If you're making bread, you can add yeast to the flour and water mixture, and the yeast is what helps the bread rise. It's what gives the dough air, I guess, as you cook it, even before you cook it, as you mix the bread. And of course, people can buy special types of yeast to give food certain flavors. And yeast is one of those things that keeps growing. It's a bacteria, basically, but it keeps living. So a lot of bakers, if they're very serious about their craft, they will kind of have a mother yeast and they keep using it, but it also keeps replenishing or recreating itself. But it's basically what turns bread from a very crispy, hard type of baked dough into the fluffy bread that we think of as being, what bread actually is. It is also what we use to turn grape juice into wine or water and barley into beer and things like that. So it's very, very important in a lot of different food preparation as a way of transforming these ingredients into something that is more acceptable to eat or to drink.
Yeah, and going back to the word bacteria, bacteria has got many different properties. And so we've got good bacteria and we've got bad bacteria.
Right.
So in the SCOBY, when you're making a SCOBY, that bacteria is good for your stomach. Right.
Okay.
So the idea is to create a bacteria that's going to help you to digest foods better.
Help your food go down easier.
Help your food go down easier.
And help all that whole system work well. Yeah, it's the same reason people might drink those yogurt drinks and things like that. And of course, bacteria is also what turns milk into cheese and stuff like that. So yeah, there's good bacteria. We have it in our stomach, but other bacteria that might get into your body through breathing or through cuts, dirty bacteria can make you sick. So what happens? Well, the SCOBY ferments the tea by gradually converting the sugar into acids. So to ferment something is basically to kind of break it down using the bacteria. Sometimes it can be a bad process. Sometimes it can be good. Often it can be kind of smelly, but it takes time. It might also take some heat. Things ferment more quickly at a higher temperature, which is why we might warm things up, or you might keep it kind of cool to keep the fermentation process, that would be the noun form, in a more controlled way, in the way that they keep wine in barrels in cool places because they don't want it to ferment too quickly. But basically, when you're fermenting things, you're converting sugar into something else. With alcohol, we're turning the sugar into the alcohol. In the case of kombucha, we're turning or converting the sugar into acids. And yes, that acid is what gives it that vinegar, that sour taste. That is what acid tastes like with lemon juice or vinegar or things like that. So now we have a basic idea of how kombucha is made and what it is. Where does it come from?
The drink likely originated over 2,000 years ago in China.
So it wasn't California 10 years ago?
No, it wasn't. But in China, people drank it for its health-promoting benefits. So health-promoting benefits, of course, good for health, promote to aid or to help your health. So as the story goes, a Korean doctor by the name of Kombu brought the tea from China to Japan to cure an ailing emperor. So I suppose when you say as the story goes, we don't exactly know all the details. So we've heard the story told a few times, or we've heard different versions of the story. So we'll start with as the story goes because we don't know all the facts as they happened and when they happened. According to the story, the person who created the tea or made kombucha for the first time, he brought the tea from China to Japan to cure an ailing emperor. ailing in this case means a sick emperor. So sick could mean with any kind of disease, as I said, as the story goes. So we're not really clear on all the details of what he was ill with.
Interesting. So this is kind of like a myth or a legend. It's not actual history written down, but this is what people have been saying for a very long time. And from there, from Japan, or even from that time, from that point in history, kombucha eventually made its way to Europe. So this could have taken place over hundreds and hundreds of years or something like that. But originated, when we use that word, that's where it came from, and then it spread to other places around the world. It made its way to Europe. This is kind of giving us the idea that it took a long time. It kind of traveled down the normal trade routes as people talked about it. Eventually, people in other parts of the world tried it, and then other people heard about it, then they tried it, and then eventually maybe in Venice or one of those great port cities, someone arrived and said, I brought this new thing back. It's great for your tummy. It's called kombucha. It's from Asia. All right, let's take a break and we'll be back with more to find out what kombucha is really good for based on what we know about it today.
While kombucha has been seen as a miracle cure for some diseases, there is no medical evidence to support such claims. However, like other fermented products, kombucha can aid in digestion and keep your gut healthy. And since it's lower in sugar than many sodas, it could also be a good choice as a refreshing beverage.
第三部分我们看到单字 digestion， 这个字是名词，表示消化系统。像是 Lloyd often suffers from digestion problems. Lloyd 经常受消化问题所苦。也可以说 Eating a large amount of food before sleeping is bad for digestion. 睡前吃大量食物不利于消化。另外补充这个字的动词 digest， D-I-G-E-S-T digest 指消化食物或是理解吸收。举例来说 Many elderly people prefer soft foods as they are easier to chew and digest. 许多老人家比较喜欢软软的食物，因为比较容易咀嚼和消化。或是 It took us some time to digest all the information. 要理解所有的资讯，花了我们一些时间。最后，我们看到单字 beverage， 这个字是名词，表示饮料。例如 After a long soccer game, nothing is better than a cold, icy beverage. 在漫长的足球赛之后，来杯冰凉的饮料最棒了。或者 Steve was thirsty, so he ordered a beverage from the waiter at the restaurant. Steve 口渴了，所以他向餐厅的服务生点了一杯饮料。
Okay, so kombucha apparently helped save an emperor of Japan's life. Eventually, it made its way to Europe, and people there started to enjoy it. But if it's gone back so long, how come I never heard of it? Well, part of it is probably because people never really knew exactly what it was good for until they really started to look at it. And now we know a lot more about really the science behind kombucha than just some legends coming to us from long ago. So what is it actually good for? Well, let's see. As the article says, while kombucha has been seen as a miracle cure for some diseases, there is no medical evidence to support such claims. Wait a minute, I thought this was going to let us all live to 500 years old. Apparently, there's a lot of people believing in it, but not a lot of medical evidence to support these claims that it's a miracle cure for some disease. I think anytime you hear miracle cure, I start to go, really? Because often you hear that term. But part of the reason there might not be medical evidence is simply because they haven't done enough proper experiments on it. So it probably won't save you from dying of anything or living to be 500 years old, but it could be good for you in certain ways, but certainly there's no science facts about it yet.
Yeah, how we quantify science is usually when people do studies and they record their findings.
Right.
When we just hear my friend tried it and he felt better, that's usually referred to as anecdotal evidence because it's a story that you've heard from someone or you heard that someone was helped by drinking kombucha.
Exactly. It's interesting, but it's not proof.
That's right. So the only really accepted scientific evidence is if there was actually a study done in a controlled environment.
All right. So what do people say, though?
They do say that, like the fermented products, kombucha can aid in digestion and keep your gut healthy.
Okay.
So all the anecdotal evidence is people saying, yeah, this helped me. The anecdotal evidence is that it does help with basic digestion, breaking down your food and keeping your stomach happy. So your gut is your stomach or your intestines. So that keeps your intestinal flora happy. So as I mentioned earlier on, there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. And so the bacteria in kombucha would probably fall into the good bacteria category.
Interesting. Yeah, as Candace explained, your gut, in this sense, is your stomach, your intestines, everything that your food goes through between when you eat it and when you go to the bathroom. We can also talk about guts, right? Sometimes you might see someone, he has guts or she had a lot of guts to do that. We're not talking about their stomach or intestines in that case. We're talking about their courage. So talking about someone having guts is not a medical thing. It's more of an emotional thing. But in this case, your gut, it is referring to your stomach, your intestines, these parts of your body. And it says since it's lower in sugar than many sodas, it could also be a good choice as a refreshing beverage. A beverage is a drink that you enjoy with your meal probably, or maybe just as you want to drink. Someone might say, would you like a beverage? Can I get you a beverage? They're basically saying, what would you like to drink? Anything from tea to cocktails to alcohol to soft drinks to juice. Those would all be beverages. And if it's refreshing, it kind of makes you feel better, right? It's something you might have on a hot day or something you might have when you need a little pick-me-up or something like that. So next time you're feeling a little thirsty at a restaurant, you want to have a nice drink to go with your nice meal, maybe skip some of those soft drinks and try yourself some kombucha. You never know, you might like it. All right, let's check out our Chinese teacher and listen to her, then we'll be back.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始写到 You may have come across kombucha on restaurant menus and wondered what it was. 好，这边用到片语 come across， 我们就来学习它的不同用法。第一种呢是课文的用法，come across 做及物用来表达说碰巧遇见偶然发现，它就会跟 bump into 或者是 run into run across 等等意思相同，那么后面可以接人或是事物。举例来说 We came across a lovely cafe a few days ago. 我们几天前偶然发现一间相当宜人的小餐馆。好，那么第二个 come across 它可以当不及物用去表达时产生什么什么印象，后面可以接 as 加上名词或形容词去表达给人什么样的印象或感觉，表现得怎么样怎么样。举例来说 She came across as a very intelligent person. 她给人的印象是个非常聪明的人。我们也可以在 come across 后面接 negatively 或者是 well 等等的副词去修饰。例如 He came across badly during the interview. 在面试的过程中，他给人的印象很差。第三个，我们可以拿 come across 做不及物用，这时候是表达说可能是某个想法它被清楚表达了解的意思。例如His passion really came across when he talked about his job. 当他在聊工作时，可以看得出他的热忱，他讲话的方式清楚传达了他对工作的热情。好，那么课文第二部分呢，有一句写到红茶菌会逐渐把糖转换成酸来发酵茶。文中用到动词 convert 去表达转换，我们来学它的字首字根。当你看到 vers 或者是 vert 这两个字根，它有转动啊、翻转或变动的意思，带有这一类字根的字 大多含有改变原状的语义。那么在 convert 这个字当中，它的字首 con 表示 together 一起，那么字根 vert 是指 turn 转，全部一起翻转，应该可以去联想到 convert， 它有转换改变的意思。好，那顺便补充几个这一类字根的单字。第一个补充的是 invert invert， 它的字首 in 表示在点点点之中或是在点点点之上，那么字根 vert 这个部分表示翻转。当我们把某东西内外翻转或者是上下翻转，那就会变成反向或是上下颠倒的嘛，那么 invert 这个动词就表示使反向使颠倒。好，第二个补充的是 divert 或者是念作 divert divert， 它的字首 di 有分离或者是从点点点的意思，字根 vert 表示转。那当某事物转移到旁边啊，或者是当注意力离开了原本的事物，我们用这样的方式去联想说 divert 它有使转向、转移或是使分心的意思咯。那么第三个是我们比较熟悉的单字 conversation， 它的字首 con 表示一起或是强调，那么字根 vers 表示转， ation 是名词字尾。我们在聊天的时候，这个讲话不是会轮来轮去会有互动吗？我们就可以用强调双方有互动才能对话的方式去联想 conversation， 它有交谈、对话、对谈的意思。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾几个单字吧。
Popularity. That restaurant has grown in popularity in recent months. Ingredient. Dwayne had difficulty finding the correct ingredients for the dish. Bacteria. A chemical is added to the water in swimming pools to kill the bacteria. Convert. Olivia and her husband converted the old church into a house. Digestion. Exercising immediately after eating is bad for digestion. Gut. Everything we eat and drink passes through the gut.
Discussion starter starts now!
And we are back. So our discussion starter for the article, would you be interested in trying kombucha? Why or why not?
Well, I have tried it on more than one occasion, and I'd say I'd love to try kombucha since it does have a unique flavor. And even though it's not scientifically proven, I do think that the bacteria has certain health benefits.
Okay, well, I kind of agree with you, but I will answer the question in the opposite way. I'm uninterested in trying kombucha because it sounds like one of those health food fads that people go crazy for, and 5 years from now they'll tell you it's really dangerous. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I'm Candice.
See you next time.